And my proposition is that integration really can only take place around people rather than around systems. The National Health Service is the most systematically minded institution you've ever encountered in your life. Everybody takes a place within its system. And I very rarely go to a health conference and find patients are in any way represented or even talked about most of the time. It is usually descends into a discussion about how this part of the system connects with this part of the system and with this one. And at the moment, how do we bring them together? The real story about the NHS is that fragmentation is written into it from its very origins. When in 1948 the hospitals were nationalised and the consultants became salaried staff in hospitals, that meant they were essentially deployed by the state. Primary care, meanwhile, of course, was established in GP services as private franchises. So the NHS is constituted a bit like America, deliberately so that no one's in control. It's very difficult to take control. It's very difficult to therefore integrate from the centre. And the task of integration is massive. It requires the coming together in any given health authority of about 1,000 people across 15 separate professional cultures to produce one single integrated mental health service. More than 4/5 of the services required to keep frail elderly people out of hospital are not, strictly speaking, even health services. And that fifth of required services which were within the fold of the NHS are provided by a huge array of different people. Absolutely inevitably, there will be parts of a system where you need first-class command and control and first-class management from the top. And it's true in all the big public service systems. And the important thing, I think, is to be agnostic between the different procedures. And I find that's actually an incredibly radical position, to say I have no view about command and control at all. I will simply work out whether, given this problem, that's the best way of fixing it. And sometimes it will be. And a good example from education is literacy, where a command and control program from the centre, teachers were told what to do at what time in the day, and it made a big difference. No problem with that at all. Just I think that fitting some of the particular problems that the NHS is now dealing with to the extent of 70% of its budget, which are historically relatively new, because we're fortunately living to those ages where we're living with morbidity for longer, requires a different approach. And I don't think command and control will work particularly well for those. And in particular, on the precise question of integrating a massive system, I think there is a cul-de-sac in the argument, which is to say, Jeremy Hunt will get together with his advisors and all the clever people who come to conferences and will redraw the map on a piece of paper and then it'll all work fine. And there's a real tendency for people to do that. And I don't blame people in this room, I blame people in government, because when you're in government, that's what you end up doing. Because you've got a short span and you think, right, what can I do? I know, I'll change all the badges on stuff and I'll just make some new things. And then I'll be able to point to them and say, that's what I did. Increasingly, the burden on the National Health Service, the burden on public expenditure, was where it becomes a political problem, is on the management of long-term conditions, where gradually over time, the patient accumulates knowledge about what that condition is like, and crucially, it may not be medical knowledge. It may be that what I need in order to alleviate my position is some money to get a taxi into town. It's not a medical thing, but it will improve my health and well-being, but it is not a medical good. And the medical professional is likely to, may well think that's irrelevant to my well-being. Actually, it's not. I know better what is good for me in that sense than the health professional does. And I do think that is a huge challenge. It's not to make the trivial point that because I've looked on the internet, I'm therefore a doctor. You know, I'm not making a trivial point about that at all. I don't think all demands by patients are therefore to be listened to. There can be foolish demands too. But in long-term conditions, we start to become experts in our own care, and at least some collaboration between the patient and the medical professional seems to be inevitable and desirable.